Hi folks, Marty here, and today we're going to do another one of our line and wash or pen and wash. The last one, a lot of you really seem to enjoy that, and I enjoyed doing it myself. So today we're going to do another one. This is a sketch and it's from a photograph from Poland. So basically I drew it with a soft pencil just to map out these shops, and then I went over it with my pen, and then when the pen was completely dry I used an eraser or rubber. So what we're going to do is we're going to, if you look at your screen, you'll see the finished painting, and what I'm going to do is just take you through this, okay? I'm going to try and keep this as simple as we possibly can. I know it's a very complicated looking one, but what we want to do is we want to get in our sky first, okay? I'm just going to use a few maps and a few rounds and something that will enable us to paint small. So something along that line there, all right? I've got two basins of water beside me as well. One for dirty water and one for clean water. I'm going to mix up a bit of a bluey colour here, okay? So, a bit of cobalt, a bit of ultramarine, and then if you have a wee scrap piece of paper beside you, just use that. That'll be really handy. Just to get the right kind of depth of colour that you want, okay? And it's trying to make up enough. What I often find is, you know, if you don't have enough volume and then you have to dip your brush back into the water to pick up water, you're actually diluting the paint that's on your brush. So sometimes it's just as handy having a wee spray bottle that you can just get some water in there, okay? So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn this upside down. I know there's some people like to mask all this off here, but I don't really have the time for that. I'm sure you don't either. Make sure you have enough, because you don't want to have to be, you know, getting in there midway and then having to mix up enough. So you get your brushes ready, and then I'm just going to cut in here. And what you want to do is you want to work with a bit of a bead. It just pulls at the bottom. What that'll do is that'll keep that wet for you. If that dries, if you're in a dry studio doing this and that dries too quickly on you, you're going to end up with hard lines and so on. So you're kind of working quite fast. I know this is probably this would be considered quite a big project for some of you, because it is quite a sizable painting. I mean, it's quarter imperial. Now that mightn't sound terribly big, but you know, it just means you've got to work quite fast. I've come down here, and you see how I've just kept that bead fresh there. I'm going to turn that upside down now, or up the right way, should I say. Okay. So I'm already getting some dried lines there, so I'm just going to come in here now, and then I'm going to work down towards that. So you're working down quite fast, and as I drop that on in there, hopefully it'll just run down. Okay, there you go. Pretty simple sky, nothing too fancy there at all. There's no clouds or anything. Usually when you have a very complicated picture that you're working on, you want to keep your sky as simple as you can, and vice versa. If you have a very complicated sky where the cloud work is what your point is in the whole painting, keep the foreground simple if you can, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to just work on these buildings here. We're going to start off on this side here, this blue one. And then we're just going to work our way across. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to block in anywhere that's blue, and then we'll do that with each building, okay? And then we'll start to work on the windows, and we'll start to build up the whole picture, okay? So if you wanted to take a quick screen grab of what I just did there, it will take you a bit of time sitting, working out the whole thing, you know, as in sketching it out and There's just no easy way around it. Okay, so I'm just going to test this. I want this to be a nice strong blue. I'm trying to mix up enough quantity here, and then we'll just maybe put a wee drop of alizarin crimson in there. Okay, I think that's pretty strong colour here. I was mixing that up with a mop just because it's easier to do, but what I'm going to do now is go into it's like a number six round. I'm going to pop that in here, and if I have to, sometimes I will have to speed the video up here just to keep you from getting bored, you know. But I tend to find, you know, talking to people who follow these videos, you're better just watching the video through first, just to get an idea of where it's going. And again, thank you all those who are subscribed to the channel. It's like any channel, basically. It's the amount of people subscribed is very few who actually watch folks who make videos and watch their videos and stuff. It's always appreciated just to know who's subscribed, and it doesn't cost you anything, which is the main point. I find pen and wash, just or line and wash, or whatever you call it, whatever you want to call it, I just find it very relaxing. Just great to switch off a bit. We're going to mix up a greeny colour next, and I think we just let that dry naturally if I want, because, you know, we're going to be, well, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be at this side of the painting. We'll get a wee bit of yellow and throw a bit of blue into it here. I think that'll probably do it there. Right. And just remember, when you're working out of a well like that, make sure you keep stirring it. You know, you keep agitating it, or else you're going to end up with maybe variations that you don't really want. Okay, so here we go. We're on to the green one. And then there's a flag there. As we like to call them in Northern Ireland, flags. Okay, and I'll just mop up any pooling. You can leave a wee bit, but not too much. If you leave too much, it'll cauliflower back into the paint. But if you leave a wee bit, then some of the paint sediments will settle, and you'll get this lovely wee variation. Alright, so that's two buildings down, the blue and then the green. Okay, so now I'm going to mix up the next colour, which is going to be yellow. Okay, so it's just watching out when we do this one, that these are going to be green. So we could use the green from here because it's already mixed up, and we'll make up a new yellow colour to do this building. And then some clean water, and then into my yellow colour. Okay. Now, if I put that yellow on neat, it'll be very luminous looking. So you can either add, there's a wee bit of orange in my palette there, so we can put a wee bit of that on just to tame it a bit, tone it down a bit, or mute it. And then a wee bit of clean water there from the wee pipbacks. Oop. Sometimes you get a wee bit of and it flows from somewhere else in the next palette. So I always get people asking me about this palette. Where do you get these? Well, you can't get them there. This is one I made. This is one I made about, I think, probably about 10 years ago. I was looking at all the palettes, and I have a few Craig Young palettes, which are very good. But the waiting time on them is quite extensive on all these handmade palettes. It's made of brass. For some of these companies, you can be waiting like a year and a half. When I first got my Craig Young palettes, there hadn't been a terrible lot of them made. So the waiting period wasn't very long. It was probably about, I don't know, a month or something like that. But I think it was always going to be an area in the market that wasn't being catered for. So a lot of the other companies have popped up over the years doing similar products. But he was certainly one of the early ones on the scene. That's Craig Young. Lovely gentleman, very easy to work with. When you get used to this kind of painting, this style, you will just drift off. And that's the reason art can be relaxing, is because you're just, it allows you just to zone out a wee bit. Let the cares of life just pass you on by there. Okay, so I'm just going to mop up some of this pooling here, just so there's not too much. Okay, so our next building is a kind of, it's almost like a plum red kind of colour. So if I was just to go into my reds, they would be very cool looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this up. I'm going to work with what I have here. We'll see. Yeah, I'll just leave that yellow in here, okay? And I'll go into some of my reds here. Okay, this is like a cad red. And red's going to draw the eye, so it all depends. If you want this building to stand out more than anything, then you would just leave it as is. And I'm going to go into a wee bit of alizarin crimson there, just to see what it looks like, and then test it out. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, so let's just pick up some of that red there. And same again. I'll just drag a wee bit of colour up here, and I'll block those all in. Okay, so moving on to our window panes here. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a bit of blue. I have some lavender in my palette here, and I'm going to grab a little touch of that. But if you don't have lavender in your palette, don't worry about it. You can just make up a bit of a purple, red, blue, and a wee bit of Chinese white or titanium white. We'll turn that towards the lavender colour there. Okay, so I'm just going to work my way across here, just hitting these all in. And these panes will be reflecting the sky, as I said, and the framework will be black. So you can either just use your pen again, and that would be the quickest and easiest route. So now we're going to move down here. We're going to work at the bottoms of these buildings, okay? So this here one here, the blue one, it's in shadow, quite heavy shadow. So we're just going to grab some of our red and blue, and that'll give us a nice purpley colour. And then we'll just hit that in, and just make sure it's dark enough for you, okay? And then you know we touch that blue there. Again, working from left to right, we'll pop that in. And we can come across this again later with some of our shadow colour. So that's why I wasn't too fussy earlier on about it and missing, because I knew I was going to go in with this here colour. Then I'm going to put a wee bit of shadow across here. Okay, so you've got these canopies here, and the original is they're white. I know in Europe a lot of those would tend to be like a reddy colour. So I can leave them white as is, or else I can go into a reddy colour. Will the red clash with this red? So you're just you're constantly making these wee decisions. I mean, if you use like an orangey red, it will complement It will complement that green. You know what? Let's give it a try. It's one of those things. It'll either be brilliant or it'll be a disaster. Just getting that neutral tint there, and grabbing some burnt umber as well. Just make it nice and dark, and we're gonna just go into these wee squares and okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up, I think we'll mix up a bit of a greeny colour for some of this plant work and so on here. And then just anywhere that you have plants or anything there, it's just a bit of an undercoat really. I think we'll do this chap here. So we're going to have some pretty dark stuff here at the minute. Okay, what I think we'll do is we'll just work on this area here. So I'm just starting out a wee bit of detail and colour and so on here. So it's just an impression, you don't have to go too literal here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just get a wee bit of gouache here. Gouache. And then if there's any wee areas that I need to hit in. Okay folks, so what we've done here is we've basically come back and we've hit these 3 buildings in with a stronger colour. They were a bit kind of anemic looking, so I've made them a bit stronger. And I've put down a dark colour over the sky. So this segment, what I'm going to show you is how I would turn a painting into a Christmas scene. What we need to do is get our gouache. The way we need to think of this is basically, if you didn't have a picture of a snowy scene, I mean, not a lot of us do. We have a lot of pictures that were maybe in the summer or whatever, but we don't have anything in the winter. And if we want to do something that's kind of fitting for the season, sometimes we just gotta use a wee bit of license, you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my gouache here and I'm just going to spray it with a wee bit of water there. And then mix it all up. So the trick is not to have this too runny. You want a nice creamy kind of consistency. If it's too runny, it'll just go absolutely everywhere. Make sure that anything that's precious is out of the way. I would normally look at everything and put paint on first, but what I might do, actually, I might do the spotter technique first, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my old fan brush that I carved up, and I'm going to dip it in that, okay? And then I'm using a bit of sponge here. And what that does, it saves my fingers really. So I'm just hitting it on those dark areas there. Just trying to get enough on there. Basically, this is saving my fingers and saving me having to damage another brush by banging it. So you're going to get some big drips there, but don't worry about it. It's sure all part of the fun. So basically it's just starting to snow is the idea here. So that's why there's no snow on the ground as such. And that's why when you're doing this snowy technique, make sure what you're spraying it onto is quite dark, because it'll sit better, it'll stand out much better. Okay, so that's coming on rightly there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a couple of wee brushes. And if you're new to the channel, then when we say wee brushes, we're talking about a brush. Not that it's small. So I'm just mixing up some of that gouache here. So again, it's getting the right consistency. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pop some of it on here. So this is the snow that's been building on the top of the roof there, coming down the edges. And then we'll put some along here. Okay, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just drag the brush along the path here. To give the impression that that's snow there as well, you know. Or it's starting to try to land. I think that's nearly there. So we put a wee mount card over it. And there you have it. There's our wee pen and wash snow scene from a painting that wasn't intended to be a snow scene. So why don't you have a go at that, folks? Or else even, you know, just watch the video and get some ideas. And if you have an old painting that you've done of a building and you want to reimagine it as a snow scene, just have a wee go at some of those techniques there, and let me know how you get on with it. So folks, till the next time, don't forget, there's also other videos you can watch this season that I've done more in depth in how to use the whole snow effect. So you'll see them as well. So be sure to watch those as well. And until I see you the next time, just keep them brushes wet and keep her lit, as we say. Until then, bye for now.